The Memphis Grizzlies had another very good season last year, getting themselves into the playoffs past the Golden State Warriors in the play-in games, and looking relatively competitive in the playoffs as well, especially before the return of Donovan Mitchell, where they ultimately did fall to the Utah Jazz. But today I want to talk about their upcoming season, the roster that they have moving into this season, on a roster that does look a little bit different than they did last year, specifically at the center spot, and a little bit less in terms of depth. So I want to talk about this roster, I want to talk about my expectations for this group, and what we can see from the Memphis Grizzlies moving forward. If you do go on to enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new, and be sure to let me know down in the comment section what your guys' thoughts are on this Memphis Grizzlies team heading into next season. That being said, let's go ahead and talk about the Memphis Grizzlies. When we talk about changes for this Memphis Grizzlies group this offseason, the biggest change is that JV is out and Steven Adams is in. Now, Steven Adams is still a fine starting center, sure, but he is not JV and nowhere near the level of JV. Now, that's not to say that Steven Adams is bad, but JV can shoot the three. Steven Adams can't do anything near that. JV has good post moves and can, on any given night, in certain matchups specifically, you can feed him the ball and he can get you 20 plus and can get you 10 plus rebounds while being a solid post defender, while being a decent rim protector. Steven Adams is not that. He's a solid rebounder. He can give you a bit of post defense. I would argue he's not anywhere near as good of a rim protector. Not that JV is some top 5 rim protector in the league, but I would rather have JV at the rim than I would Steven Adams. And Steven Adams is not giving you any amount of spacing on the offensive end, nor is he a great post scorer or a post move guy anywhere near the level of JV. He's just not that. So you lose a lot with JV leaving and Steven Adams coming in. Now the trade-off with that was that they got the 10th overall pick and they got to bring in Zaire Williams, who sure has some upside, but on this team immediately is not going to have a significant role. So for this upcoming season, it is most certainly a step back. And they've also taken a worse contract. Now sure, JV was an expiring contract, so long term it makes sense. But for this season specifically, if I'm doing a season preview, they are much worse with Steven Adams than they are with Jonas Valanciunas, as someone who was arguably the second best player on this team last year. Arguably the most valuable player with the time that Ja Morant missed. Probably not, but you could make the argument, and I wouldn't think you're crazy. But Ja is still that guy for me. Nonetheless, outside of the Steven Adams and Jonas Valanciunas swaps, Chris Dunn came in, Jarrett Culver came in, and Zaire Williams, as mentioned, was drafted, and Justice Winslow and Grayson Allen left the team. Grayson Allen, I believe, was about to have to get a payday soon, and so he was shipped out for some picks. And Justice Winslow, his time had run out in Memphis, as it has with many other teams in the NBA, and he just hasn't been able to find his footing, and it was no different in Memphis. And so when you're talking about this group for the upcoming season, they still have a lot of depth. They are one of the deepest teams in the NBA with a lot of young players as their depth, which is something they've laid their cap on for the last couple of years and has led to a lot of success, continuing to be led by Ja Morant. But I want to talk about what could either raise the ceiling for this group or kind of keep them at a fairly low ceiling and only getting as good as Ja Morant can take them. So of course Ja Morant is the leader on this team. He's the best player on this team. He's one of the best point guards in the game, especially one of the best young point guards in the game, and has all-star potential. No doubt about that. But what do they have outside of him? Who's going to help elevate this Memphis Grizzlies team as more than just a bottom of the Western Conference playoffs team? Dillon Brooks showed amazing flashes last year. We all know his aggressive, tenacious defense and how impactful he can be on that end. But he really showed up on the offensive end at the back end of last year, specifically in the play-in in the playoffs, hitting some big buckets, being very good from 3 and from mid-range, and taking a lot of the offensive pressure off of Ja Morant, who in of himself still played very well. Jaren Jackson Jr. is someone who needs to take a big step forward. He, of course, was out last year with injury for a significant part of the season, but he now needs to rebound this upcoming season and have a much better year, as he has showed a lot of promise in the NBA, but as of more recently, he's either been injured or not showed that level of promise, and so he needs to capitalize on that and be more like a co-star to Ja Morant in the coming years if this team wants to have a high level of success. Those are the two ceiling raisers for me on this team. Kyle Anderson's going to do his thing. Desmond Bane is a nice guy off of the bench. They have extremely good guard depth, which I think is the biggest strength on this team, in Chris Dunn, in Tyus Jones. in Anthony Melton, in Desmond Bane, who will also likely see some time at the 3 as well. And they also now have Jarrett Culver. They also have Zaire Williams. Their depth is absolutely ridiculous. They have Brandon Clark in behind Jaren Jackson Jr., who's a solid backup power forward. They have Xavier Tillman in behind Steven Adams. A lot of their depth is young, too. They are just such a fun, exciting team. Their identity is based on being a hard-working, hard-nosed defense, which they do extremely well. They have a good coach. This is just a solid team. But something needs to change for them to take the next step, for them to be just more than a solid, deep, hard-working defensive team. Is Jaren Jackson Jr. going to become a co-star? Is Dillon Brooks going to become a co-star and continue to take step forwards on the offensive end, become more efficient, and get in a little bit less foul trouble? Those are the biggest questions for me with this Memphis group in this upcoming season, because as of right now, I think this is a team that's going to struggle to get into the playoffs. I think they're a team that gets into the play-in, but without JV, I think that's going to be a significant loss to their offense. There were some games last season where you could just give JV the ball in the paint and he would run the way. Specifically when Ja Morant was injured, JV was extremely good. And even when Ja was back, you just had certain games, certain matchups where JV would do his thing, put up 20 plus, and just be a dominant force down low. And there was nothing the opposing team could do about it. You're not going to get that from Steven Adams. Steven Adams is not some paint scorer who's going to get the ball in the post and do a bunch of post moves and get a bunch of buckets for you. That is not Steven Adams. JV is that. And so they have lost a lot there, but their depth is still extremely good. Their defense is still extremely good. I think their guard play is brilliant between Ja Morant and Dillon Brooks. I think Desmond Bane is going to be a very important part for this team off of the bench. And it's not outrageous to say that Kyle Anderson still might get traded, and then Desmond Bane has an even more significant role at that point. But what can Jaren Jackson Jr. do for this group? What's his level of play going to be this season? That's the biggest question for me, and I think that is the biggest difference between what will make this team a 9 or a 10 seed, or a seed team that can potentially push to being at the top end of the playing games and get themselves back in the playoffs. But let me know down in the comment section what you guys think of this group, who you think has to perform the best to raise the ceiling for this team, and if you think this team will be better or worse than they were last year. But let me know down in the comment section, and if you did enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. And if you want to hear my other season previews as we approach the NBA season, then be sure to click the box on the right hand side of the screen. That being said, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.